Record. All right. Welcome to Cast the Craze podcast audio mix. I am your host with the most, Sam, the crazy man, Vera.
And I'm George Medina. See, you were supposed to be like, and I'm here with.
And I'm here with.
Nah, forget it. It's over. Let that go.
4 and 3 and 2 and 1 when I'm on the mic.
Oh,
right.
man.
All right. So welcome to another episode of Cast the Craze. We have a special guest on later on today. His name is Jake Estrada. Hey, George?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Remember the last time you told me he was going to be on the show? I said Eric, and I apologize, Jake. It's Jake Estrada.
Estrada, like
yeah.
Erica Estrada?
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be a good show, man. Very interesting guy. He's been doing this for years, man. Like 2005, I think, is when he started, and we can ask him a lot more about his background. But yeah, I mean, it's a grind, man. It's a grind. We talk about this all the time. It's a grind, and it looks like he's been at it for a while, so that's gonna be fun.
That's gonna be fun. So, I'd like to talk about the process of writing. Right. So, how do you approach writing your stories?
Oh, so you're getting right into it, Sam. You're
Getting
just
right
gonna
into
boom, go, no foreplay. Just let's talk.
This is how we do it.
Okay. My process. All right. So, I like to write. I like to put together outlines of stories, and I didn't start doing that right away. I remember when I first started drawing comics, fold an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and start drawing on the piece of paper, and as the story went along, it went along. That's how I did comics. It wasn't until right about when we met that I started actually writing the scripts for the comics, and then it was about outlines, just so that I don't get lost on the way to the end of the story.
Right.
So it's almost like my my map, so to speak. I'll start with a beginning, a middle, and end. A setup, conflict, and a conclusion, or a resolution, I should say.
Right.
So that's how I do it. And then I'll have like I carry a little book with me, and then if I'm thinking of a scene, write the scene down, or if I'm thinking of dialogue that a character may say,
Right.
write it down. And that's usually how I do my thing. How do you do your thing?
It starts with the character, just the thought of the character. So it's ever since I was a kid, I used to the dreams. So it starts with a dream. You dream of this character, and you're like, oh, where'd that come from? Where'd that influence come from? And then you sketch down the look of the character, and like, all right, what's this character about? And then I start fleshing out the character's profile, the history. Who is this character? Where'd he come from? What's he involved in? Where's he going? And then are there any supporting characters, right? So I start building on that. And then once I have a fundamental base for the main crew, then I start just fleshing out a history. So I start working on the history, and similar to when we first met with Forbidden, right? So what was the story, the backstory, and so I knew I come up with the beginning, middle, and end, and I leave the end broad, because what happens is, as I start writing, like when I start formatting the script, I find that sometimes it takes a different turn, which is why I leave it open. That's why it was important for me to always go back to the character, the antagonist, the protagonist, who's the arch nemesis, all those things, and then it opens up a lot of possibilities for me. So I'll give you a perfect example. With Forbidden, writing this book, I took 10 years off of writing it, right?
Yeah.
So I went back. I had to reread it because I left off on 2 issues. I had 0, 1, and 2. And
So you had never, it wasn't completed. So the story was never.
The history, the 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 narrative was done, like the plot. Like I had a plot, but I forgot I had to read it, so I had to where I left off, what's going on, and then what I found out was, all right, as I partnered up with a new artist and I started writing again, then it just went a whole different another direction. Like who I thought was going to be the character that saved the day, whatever.
Yeah.
It changed.
Right.
Right. And so, initially Sin was my guy. And he was the guy.
Sin is the main character.
He was the
of
main
story.
character.
Sin is the main character.
Right. And so things changed up. And it just started evolving into another direction. So in a way, I'm glad that I had that period off, because I got to approach it from a different perspective. Then it became challenging, because now there's dozens of characters. It's a big arc, and so it was even more important. And I like the guy that I'm working with, because every time I sent him a script, he would ask, "Who's this character? Who's this character? Who's this?" And I forgot. So all these supporting characters that I started adding in, I didn't have a profile for the supporting characters, right? So then I had to go back.
Well, I think that some of that is partly to blame is the fact that originally, or maybe not for you, but sometimes when you're an artist/writer, you know what the story's about. And because you feel like I'm going to draw the story anyway, I don't really need to write this down. I know what it is. I'll just draw it. And then when you give it to that artist to draw it, you're like, holy cow, I forgot that I didn't put that in. And so now you got to work to kind of fill those holes that now the artist is asking you about, because you never even thought to do that because you were going to draw it in the first place.
Right.
So I think that, and even you as an artist, you tend to start with a sketch of a character.
Yes.
Right. So you'll sketch them out and then you'll flesh them out that way, rather than in words. You'll do it visually.
Right. Okay. And what was happening with the artist that I'm working with is I found that I carry a brown leather sketch pad with me, and so I was constantly redesigning the look. Right, I was like, it's got to look this way. It's got to look this way. He's got to look this, So, and when I added these characters, although they were supporting characters, they had significant roles. There was a look that I wanted to capture.
Yeah.
So it found that number one, I got excited again, but two, it was great to see how it's just evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like for me, it starts with the thought of the character. Who the character is.
Starts with the character.
Where does he fit? What's the what am I trying to achieve with this character? What's the purpose of this character? And then just start plotting it out. And I usually do it by hand first. Like I write it out first.
Yeah.
Because it evolves from that. Because then when I take from pen to paper and I start typing the history, it starts getting tighter and tighter. You know what I mean?
I think, and I don't know. I mean, and I don't know how the young kids are doing it nowadays. I don't know if it's something where like that whole writing something down on paper. I don't know if that still. Not that it doesn't exist, but I'm saying I don't know if that's the way that writers go about it now, because we're a little older. So like we're used to the.
Speak for yourself.
So we're used to the. Here's the pen. Here's the paper. Let's put it down. Even in drawing and sketching and things of that nature, everything's on a tablet now. It goes right to the tablet. Whereas, and I agree with you. I do the same thing. Like if I'm like at a coffee shop or something like that, I'll have my laptop, but maybe I don't type fast enough to get all my thoughts out on the screen. So I have to write it down and put it down on paper rather than, and like you said, that when it comes to the to the tablet or the laptop, that's when you start just tightening it up.
Yeah,
finishing it up, putting the finishing touches on it, and then you print it. And how do you go about editing? What's your editing process? He's like, I don't edit. Edit what?
It starts with I think it's the collaboration. It's when I go back and proofread. Okay. And as far as you're talking about text, Okay.
Yeah. Like you write your story, and now you want to make sure there aren't any, it's still making sense. You don't have any, things.
Oh, I get it. Read it over again. I find myself reading it over and going back. So what I did was when I wrote 3, I went back to 2 to see if I'm following the sequences. I didn't skip a beat. Like for instance, there's a scene with Viejo where he gets beaten badly, and so he's left for dead. But there's a battle going on, and then I realized that 18 pages in, I still never reflected on what happened to him. Right? So you have to remember. Wait, what's going on with this scene here? So it's always remembering those, when especially it gets more complicated when there's more characters. So I think it's really just going back and reading it over, and making sure. So what I did now is I write down, here's what I want to see happen in this chapter, right? So this person and this scene here, whatever, and I plot out the chapter, and then I go and start writing it out. So now I already have a roadmap. Yeah. So it's easier for me.
Well, yeah, those are like your outlines. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. Because we can get lost. Yes. We were writing. We're just constantly writing, and it makes sense to us because we're the creators. We know what the story's about. But then you got to think about that person who's reading it for the first time, who doesn't know who the heck Viejo is or any of that stuff. So you have to introduce. You have to let them know who it is. Introduce them. It's it is. It's fun though, man. When you get it, like when you start doing it, it's just the process. Don't get me wrong, the process. Sometimes it's very hard because you start questioning yourself. Like, is this making any sense, man? Like, does this make sense?
Right.
But when you figure it out, it's so rewarding to like be able to write this down, read it, say, wow, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know that. I think the reward for me is when the artist is inspired by what they're reading. Right? Similar to when Anibal started writing, illustrating Forbidden. He was excited. He was hooked. Right?
Yeah,
he loved where it was going. So the fear is, all right, now I'm working with a different artist. Is he going to have that same commitment level, that same passion? And he was excited. He ran with it. And I think, and you see it with every page that he produced, right? So he's capturing the amount, the enormity of some of these scenes. Yeah. And you think about single panel images that can capture an emotion, and it started with text, right? So if you can influence the artist's imagination, you're one step ahead of the curve. And that's the hard part, right? Because not everybody's going to appeal to your product.
Right. So your scripts, are they tight or are they loose? Where you basically just tell them, okay, listen, this is what I want on this page.
No, he gets full scripts.
You get panel 1, panel 2. This is what's happening in this panel. Okay. So there isn't. Yeah. He doesn't. Do you give him a chance to, like? Do you put, camera angles, or do you let him play with angles? Do you let him kind of like explore how you want certain things?
So one of the things that I do is it'll say over the shoulder shot of Shaku in the foreground with David Hunter in the background facing Shaku coming on, whatever. So he'll know what I'm looking at.
So you tell him where to put the camera,
yes,
and then he can draw that however he wants. Yeah, sometimes I kind of like to see how creative the artist can get with a panel or with a page. So unless I see something very specific, right, I kind of just let them, I say, these two characters are in a scene and they're having this conversation. I tell them what kind of expressions are on their faces, what they're feeling. And then I just, however he wants to put it. Now, when you get you get the thumbnail or whatever, if it's something that you're like, that's a little boring.
Right.
Then maybe I'll give him a little more direction. But I sometimes I like to see how creative that artist can really get, and let him kind of, show off his skill.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like if you tell them too much, like if you say close up of this, or sometimes they like, okay, well, that's what I have to draw. That's what I have to draw, and they don't get to they don't get to show off what they can really do.
Right.
You have to. I mean, I think there's a balance, obviously, but I think that I like to leave it open sometimes.
Yeah. So on the screen, I have like the synopsis of Forbidden. that's on the screen for the people to see. It's just a quick snippet.
Yeah.
Based on the conversation that we're having. But I try to give as much detail. He has captions in it, the dialogue that's in it,
Right.
who's saying what to what,
Yeah.
the image that I'm trying to capture. I know I guess it must be culture wise because I know he had a problem with one of the characters crying. He's like, well, he's a warrior. Men don't cry, whatever. I said, no, he does cry in this scene and
That's
whatever.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that you when you're working with somebody internationally, you don't know what the traditions or customs are, or whatever. But obviously, it's definitely an alpha society where men are strong and they don't show any signs of weakness. But I think the whole thing is when you're writing stories, I think the biggest thing you can do is come up with the history. Create the history first. Have a character bio. Each character should have a profile and a bio. It'll make it easier as you're fleshing out the story. And I always was able to say, am I being true to this character's profile? And I can look at oh, wait, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. Oh, I have to course correct. I took him on a different path.
Yeah. When I read this book on screenplays, and the author talked about that, about when you're creating a character, you need to know like everything about that character. Talk about bring it back to like when he was 10 years old, and like draw and think about his life in increments of like 10 to 15 years.
Right.
This is what he did when he was this age. This is what he did when he was this age. Because you're not going to use all of that stuff. But
right.
If you ever need to, understand why he does something specific, you can go back to that time in his life or her life,
right,
and say, okay, that's why he does that. Or that's why she does that. And it's interesting that you say that because it is. These people are real to you.
Yeah.
They're real people.
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot of people sometimes base their characters on people they know, just because it's easier to say, okay, yeah, I kind of know this guy, and he wouldn't say that, or she wouldn't say that, or she wouldn't do this.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. I know Jonathan Syfax always says that writing is the hardest job in the world, and I'm like, I'm sure there are other hard jobs, but no, he's adamant about that. He feels like it's tough because you have to make people believe what you're saying and make it make sense to them to the point where like they buy it and they go along with this story and they go on the ride with you. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, and I love it, man.
I love everything about it. I think this was a great conversation. I think we can follow up. We got a couple of minutes before we get Jake. He's going to be calling in. Let me just make sure everything is.
Yeah, I wonder what his process is like. How he goes about the whole writing process.
Yeah,
because I think everybody. I mean, obviously there are certain things that you have. There are certain rules that you have to abide by when you're writing.
Yeah.
But I think that once you know the rules, you're able to bend them a little bit.
Yeah.
To however you want to kind of do your thing. So. Yeah. What is he? He's calling in.
Yeah, he'll be calling in a minute, and when he does, we'll take a commercial break, and then we'll be chatting with him. But I think that's a really good concept. If there's a topic that you guys want us to cover on Catch the Craze, write us. Let us know what you would like us to discuss. We are not experts, but we've been in the game for a while.
We dabble in writing.
Yes, we do a little bit here, a little bit there. You know what I'm saying? It's so if you wanna, so here we go. I'm gonna just go to commercial. Hello, Jake. Hi. Hold on 1 second. I want to get you on Rodecaster Pro. How's it going, buddy?
Sweet. Not much. Just working and keep on hustling out here, man.
Outstanding. So welcome to Catch the Craze. We're excited to have you on. We understand that you went from a comic book creator to a filmmaker. So we got a lot to talk
That's right.
about. Yes, you're doing big things. So, George has a few questions for you. So we're going to start the game, George.
Jake, what's up, man? It's George. How you doing, bud?
Nice to meet you, George.
Nice to
Doing
meet.
pretty good yourself.
Good, man. I don't think we've been, formally introduced. I know I see you on Facebook all the time, and you're doing big things, but I've never really had a chance to kind of chat with you. But so this is gonna be kind of cool. We're actually gonna get to know each other here.
Sweet.
So okay, so just we're basically gonna take the audience on a journey of your life here. So we're not gonna get too deep, but we're definitely gonna try to get as much information from you as possible. All right. So I'm gonna start from the very beginning. You're originally from from Philadelphia, right? From PA.
That's right.
Okay. So how was it growing up in PA? Like, was there like a big artistic influence in Philly when you were growing up? How was it like? What was it like growing up there?
Well, I took to liking art when I was a young kid, and my mom signed me up with the local little chapter called a Lighthouse out over off of out in North Philly. So I would draw during the summer out there in the Lighthouse, and just fell in love with comics right around that time too. My dad, who was a roofer, bought like my very first comic, which was like the Punisher from like 7-Eleven at the time, and I fell in love with the medium, and I just started doing more art around there, and I just kept on going with that.
Gotcha. So the Lighthouse was what? Was it like a young kids like center? What was the Lighthouse?
Well, it was for it was in North Philly, kind of ghetto area, kind of run down. So they were trying to get it was run by other Hispanics and stuff like that. So they were trying to make sure that kids had an outlet to do something instead of running with gangs and doing bad things and initiatives and stuff like that.
So that's awesome. So that was almost like an escape from that kind of life, right? Just drawing out there and doing your thing. That's awesome, man. And then so how long were you in Philly? Did you where you live now? You live in Jersey now?
No, I live in Florida. I've lived in Florida for the last 13 years.
Ooh, all right. So you went from Philly to, I believe you went to New Jersey.
Yeah,
and then
I lived in Philly.
Okay.
I lived in Philly for a little bit, and then I moved to New Jersey. I lived in New Jersey from like 13 to about 22.
Wow.
And then the time you and I met, I was still living in Jersey. My dad had just died a few weeks earlier.
Oh.
And then after that, like 2-3 weeks later after I met you, I moved to Florida. So there's been some time in between there. We moved to Florida, and I just started doing things around here.
I got you. So when did you start like your own comic books? I know you said you read that Punisher comic. You fell in love with the medium. When did you start drawing or writing your own comics? Like, how did that start?
Well, after I read that comic, I started, I got into comics really hard, and then I was always drawing. And before long, I remember telling my mom and my dad, I was like, well, I'm going to be a comic artist. And they're like, well, ask them. And they're like, well, yeah, you can do that, but I hope it pays the bills, My mom's more of a realist. My dad at the time was like, son, you can do anything you want. Just don't be a roof. Tell me stuff like that. Go to school, learn, and be intelligent. Don't be a dummy like me.
Oh, man,
And I used to laugh. Like, okay. So, I started creating my own little, my own type of comics. I started creating various characters. I had all types of characters as a kid going through high school. I would make little personal comics and give my friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they would read them. And, this is great stuff. And then after high school, I kind of dropped off from doing that. I just went straight to college. And after I went to college, I did different types of art like graphic design. I took multimedia design. Mm-hmm. And then from multimedia design, I graduated with a degree from that in New Jersey. And then I had weird jobs. Yeah. I just started working as a switchboard operator and, anything to pay the bills.
I got you. But in your downtime or in your, after work, your job became writing these independent comics, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So it was right around the time I was having my second daughter. Not my second daughter, my second kid. Mm-hmm. I have an older son than I have my daughter at the time. She was coming along. My wife was pregnant. And I told her, I'm done working for other people. I'm going to start getting art jobs. So I started doing like design work for tattoo artists. And then on top of that, I started creating my own comic book.
Right.
And then I went back and I dig through my archives and I found various different characters and I stumbled on BOCAS, which was actually based off the likeness of my father at the time. Because me and him, we used to sit down and I used to have him as my actor and pose in there, and I would draw and use his likeness.
That's awesome. And now you're of Puerto Rican descent, right?
Yeah.
So
My
BOCAS,
father was born in California, Puerto Rico, and my mom, Puerto Rican background, Humacao, stuff like that.
right? And you have Taino blood in you, right?
Oh, I do.
Yeah. So is that now BOCAS means mouths in Spanish? Is that
Yeah.
what? So tell us a little bit about BOCAS. What is that about?
Well, what BOCAS is more or less just a name, kind of a back, just like, you know, people have weird last names, like,
Yeah.
you know, Bocanegra. I've run into different people with different Hispanic last names, funny ones too sometimes. But I was just playing around. I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to call him BOCAS. Kind of like a play on, like, from the Bible, your tongue is a kindler, you speak with your mouth,
Okay.
you can evoke a curse. I remember my grandma always tell me that. She's like, "Caiga, boca, stop hablando tanto mierda."
Oh man, grandmas, Spanish grandmas, they're the best.
Yeah.
So guys, so keep telling us a little bit about this story.
Say again?
No, so continue. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So BOCAS, so you this character.
Yeah, so that was the formation of BOCAS. So I took the idea that it was like he was like a fallen angel that had fallen, and he originally was corrupted. He fell with the original run that the original angels that had fallen to earth with Lucifer and all that stuff, and I played on that idea. And somehow his character eventually migrates to Puerto Rico, and he intermingled with the Tainos out there on the island of Puerto Rico, and he became sort of like their mascot or their hero of some sort. And you would evoke his name by mentioning his name, he would appear.
Oh wow!
And that's the kind of the story I thought about that, and that's why in the very first, the real crudely drawn original BOCAS issue, that pretty much happens in that book too. Roberto Gomez, as he's dying, he invokes his name, and BOCAS comes back to life.
So is Roberto Gomez BOCAS, or is that another character in the book?
Well, Roberto Gomez was the catalyst that brought BOCAS back into the more modern era, because BOCAS had apparently died earlier.
Gotcha.
Not in the comic, but had died earlier, you know, off screen, I would call it now.
Yeah, no, definitely. So now, is there a lot of did you do a lot of research about the Taino culture when you wrote the book, or was it more of like how do you work that out? Well,
the great thing about the Taino culture, my dad, you know, since he lived in Yaucoa, the name is actually named after the war chief's daughter, Yaucoa. So that's why they named the town. So my dad, he had a great love for the Taino culture, and he would tell me a lot of stuff. I mean, some of the stories, he would just make up some stuff too on top of that. But my dad was a great storyteller, and he would tell me about the cuevas and the finca over there in Puerto Rico, which, you know, and he would talk about how he would find like arrowheads, and he would just go on talking about stuff. And I remember as a kid going to Puerto Rico visiting, and I would go on like these hiking expeditions with him, and he would show me what the Tainos were building, and then how it was destroyed by the Spanish, and he would just go on and on. So I had knowledge from my father.
Right.
So then after when I wrote the book, I started writing the book, I started studying more about Taino culture as well.
I got you. So now I was reading up a little bit about your background, and I read something very interesting. It said you have published over 70 comics in the underground comic book scene. Now that's since 2005, right? So is it 70 issues of BOCAS, or is it like a whole bunch of different stories that you have published?
Okay, yeah. So I live out here in Florida. When I first moved out here, I moved out to Kissimmee, and I moved over to what they call the Space Coast, which is right next to Kennedy Space Center. Mm-hmm. And I was still doing the con circuit. I had published The Human Virus, and I published Maestro, and then I published what was the other book? A screenplay book. So I published those books. I did the con circuit. I went back to Philly. I went to Philadelphia Comic Con. I went to several different cons. I just kept on doing the convention circuit. I was getting many old jobs one-offs for here and there.
Right.
And I started to think about something, I sat back and I was like, there has to be something different than just doing a concert. This is a dog and pony show, I thought.
Right.
I told my wife, I started thinking about that. I want to go and do something that's probably radical, something totally crazy. I'm going to make a comic book and I'm going to give it away for free.
Wow.
But I'm going to sell advertising space. And she was like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make it like the old comics where you used to have all these ads in it and just print it out using that money. So I came back to Brevard County here in Florida and I started to work on Space Coast Comics.
Okay.
And I sold ads for that inside, and I would publish comics about a character called Being in a Spacesuit. This was about an astronaut from another alternate reality that was coming to this Earth. He wanted to remake the world in his image and make it right because the last universe he lived in was all screwed up, and now he was going to fix things. So he came here and basically he just destroyed everything. And it was like sort of like an anthology series, comic series with all these ads, and I was giving away for free. I eventually started working with Nino. Remember Nino Mazzarino?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Nino from Chicago.
Yeah. Me and him, I've been friends with him for years. He started submitting stories, and he started running his character, the Unbelievable Curtain Man, in the book.
Yeah. So you published you published some of his stories in your magazine?
Yes, I did.
Nice.
And
okay.
and I published his stories, and then I published Pete Hernandez. God bless his soul. He recently passed away about a year and a half ago.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And I was publishing his art, and I published multiple other people's art as well. So I was treating like an anthology series. So I would draw part of it, and I would have other creators submit their stories. And I would have books, and I published 50 issues of that for 50 months straight.
Jeez, dude, that's incredible.
Yeah. And I would do convention versions, like I partnered up with Space Coast Comic Con, and I eventually became a partner of that Comic Con.
Right.
So we had a convention, like it would be a program / comic book with the ads in it, and then I would do other local conventions. That way I did like the Melbourne show one.
Right.
I did one for some other one called Nerd Fest.
Yeah.
I did so many ones. I even did one for a music concert called 80s in the Park down here.
Wow. So that's what the public, when you say you published over 70 comics, you're talking about the comics that were published within your magazine.
Yes, because
Gotcha.
it was the same size. It was the same size as comic size.
Right.
It wasn't magazine size. It was just comic size.
Right.
But I had free ads. It was free. And I was printing upwards to like 9,000 to 10,000 copies a month.
Wow, good for you, man. And now you weren't giving these. Were you giving these away for free, and the ads were kind of paying for it, or were at this point now you were charging for them?
So people were paying for the ads, like they were paying for the
Right.
for a back ad. They were paying for ad inside, internal, and it was full color too.
Right.
So I was selling all these ads, and then I was then printing the book up, and I was distributing it myself. So this became my full-time job, where I would get the print run delivered to me, and then I would go and distribute it throughout the county where I lived, and then there was a Chicago edition as well.
Right.
So Nino would get his copies, and he'll distribute it around town where he lived.
Yeah, I remember Nino used to hit up like coffee shops and stuff, right? Like he was like you guys would like that guerrilla kind of distribution.
Yes.
Awesome.
So I was building all this, and I was going full steam, and then we lost our fourth child. Me and my wife.
Oh,
he passed away. He lived for 16 days, and he died. And it was a hard time, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. And I just quit. And there's where I was already friends with another guy called Chuck Fresh.
Right.
He's from Philly as well, but he lives down here in Florida.
Right.
And he's actually a voice actor. He's also the voice of a Siri radio station, like a Hair Nation.
Okay.
So he does that. He's the voice of that, and then he's voiced cartoons, and he's voiced a bunch of other stuff, and he also works as a VJ. And I mean, he has a lot of knowledge in that.
Right.
Me and him were friends, And he came to me and he's like, Jake, you need to get out of this rut. You need to do something. I'm like, dude, I ain't drawing no more comics. I ain't printing no more comics. I'm done. I don't care.
Wow.
And he was like, well, why don't you go back to your library of characters you have and make a movie?
Oh,
and that's something that like sparked in my mind. And I was like,
Now, when was
okay.
it? What year was this, Jake? Not to interrupt you. What year did this conversation happen when he said, "Hey, go back to your characters and do a movie"? When was this?
About it's going to be about 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. So he said, "Go back, pick a character, make a movie." Which one did you pick? Let me guess. BOCAS.
So, yeah, I eventually settled on BOCAS. Yeah.
Right. Now, what made you settle on him? Why do you say I settled on him?
Well, I was going back and forth thinking, original thing, let me write an original script. And he kept on saying, no, go to one of your comic properties. And he kept on pushing me, and then I said, oh, okay. And he actually went through my catalog of different drawings, illustrations, and everything like that I had.
Right.
And he was like, this guy right here. And I was like, oh, BOCAS. I said, that was based on my dad, man. My dad's been dead for a few years, and the characters kind of become this. Whenever I would publish it, I would make BOCAS killing Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, making a joke out of it almost.
Right.
And he was like, no, this guy right here, he kind of looked like him. I'm like, well, that's because my dad. And I said, but I'm fatter version than him. My dad was like 180 pounds, soaking wet.
Right.
Me, I'm like almost 7 foot tall.
Dude, you're 6'9",
like
right?
300 pounds.
Holy cow. You're 6'9", right?
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
So he's like, no, that would make you even scarier.
Yeah, you could totally like cosplay your own character at like conventions and stuff. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So I eventually settled on him, and I went back and we started writing the screenplay. I wrote the first version, and then he wrote a little bit, and then we just kept going back and forth talking about it for several weeks and a few months before we proceeded to start lensing the film.
Wow. So now you start shooting this film. So you get the script, you start shooting the film. How long did it take to shoot?
It took about a year and 3 months.
Okay. Is it a big cast?
It ended up, it was funny because originally it was going to be a short film. It was going to be like maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes long, but the script kept growing. Because originally I was like, well, I'll make it a continuation to one of my comic stories. So it was going to be like some weird story about this fallen angel, and the world was going to be a post-apocalyptic world. The world had gone to shit, where they blew up the world, and BOCAS was just walking down the road. And he was like, that's a great idea, but people are going to look at it and like, what the hell is this movie about? I'm like, okay. So that made me go back to the source material. I went back to the source material and I pulled out all the characters from the original underground comics I did and all the things like that. I went and took, Roberto Gomez, Luis Gomez, Vato, all those characters that were in there, all the ethnic characters, all the Latino characters.
Right.
I brought them back into the original story. I even brought back Gusano. I was El Dueña, and all these different characters I had. I put them in there, and the movie grew.
Right.
So by the time I was done, I had a script that was like a 120-page script.
120 pages. So about a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Jeez, man, that's an under that like that's quite a. You took on like this 120 page screenplay, and now so what was the writing process like? Because we were talking about the writing process for us, right? Like, so what was? I know you said it kept expanding. Like, what's your process? How do you sit down and write a script?
Well, a lot of times for me, and it's always been that way, kind of like I start having conversations with the characters. It's kind of weird. Like I sit down and I start drawing it or writing the script out. And as I'm writing the script out, I'm like, well, I feel like the characters start telling me, well, look, man, you gotta talk more about this. And I start going in that direction. I'm sort of like, okay, I better start getting it has to make sense to me too as well. So I start thinking, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would the character do this? Why would the character be so obsessed? Or why would the character make that right turn opposed to a left turn? You know, and it just started to evolve that way. And then I would write the script, write the whole parts of the screenplay, and then I would have my wife read it, and she would even tell me, look, that's weird. And I was like, I know, it is kind of weird, isn't it? You know, we would go back, my wife was also involved with this too, so it's funny.
That's awesome.
Because so she was reading it, then my buddy Chuck would read it, and he was like, what? I'm like, yeah. And then sometimes I would reread it before you send it back, and I'm like, nah, I would mix stuff. So it was one of those things.
Right. So no, that sounds crazy interesting, man. When is the movie? Now the movie's out now. When does it come out? How do we watch this movie?
Well, I right now I have the world premiere. I'm calling it. It was not really a world premiere, but it's premiering at a local theater over here in Melbourne on Thursday night at 8 p.m. I'm having a little premiere party, and then I have Blu-rays coming in. They should be in tomorrow, and then I'm getting it closed captioned as we speak. So I can eventually put it up onto Amazon to stream.
Good for you, brother. That's impressive, man. That is amazing. I love to hear stuff like this. So it's gonna premiere at one of your local theaters in Melbourne. Now that's on that would be on this Thursday, the what is that? The 10th, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the Blu-rays now, are they gonna be able to? Are you selling those on your website, or how can they get these Blu-rays?
So the first people that I'm going to sell it to, obviously, are the people that are coming out to my premiere party. I'm going to have a premiere party at the comic shop at 9.9 Comics over here in Melbourne. Okay. So they're going to. I have a copy there, and then I'm going to eventually put a link on my website so people can come and purchase the movies there. And then what I was doing when I was selling some tickets, I actually was selling VIP tickets. So the VIP tickets also gave an option where you got that package. They were also able to get a Blu-ray copy the night of. So quite a few of those sold as well.
That's awesome, brother. That's awesome. Another thing that I read on your bio is that you firmly believe that art of any type can save lives, right? So now,
yes.
it just from speaking to you right now, it just seems like art has been that kind of support for you, right? Like you've lived life. You grew up in a very rough neighborhood, and it seems like art just kept you going.
Yeah, art has always been one of my biggest escapes. You know, a lot of things could happen. I think back, you know, things that I could have done. I remember this a relative of mine being murdered, and I wanted to go out and hurt people because of that. But instead of going out hurting somebody, I turned around and focused on my art and actually put it into my art and told stories that way about how I felt.
Right.
I feel that, you know, people pay attention to art. You know, even if they say it sucks or they don't like it or they say don't read comics or things like that. Right. There's different ways of making people read the message that you're trying to tell. Right. And then, you know, and to me, art is almost anything, you know, from being a poet to being a singer to being an actor. Correct. To, you know, art, basically art, life is art.
That's right.
And I being a part of that and like being in that world and teaching tomorrow's generation that way. And that's how I got into teaching too.
Right. So you also teach. You teach art.
Yes, I do teach art. I have, for the last few years, taught students art. I've also gone to local universities over here in Florida and spoke to students about what it takes to be an artist and what they should be doing and how they should be approaching, you know, different potential clients and things like that.
That's awesome, bro. Listen, Jake, this has been very inspiring, bro. I really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about, you know, your life and what's going on in your artistic career. So where can they contact you or what are some of your social network channels, or where can they reach you, or if anybody's interested in some of the stuff that you're doing?
Oh, they can find me on Facebook. They can find me on Twitter. They can type in Jake Estrada, BOCAS. They can find me Jake Estrada Space Coast Comics, Jake Estrada Space Coast Comic Con, even Indie Originals com, which is another competition that I back as well.
Wow.
Okay. For the Spacey Awards, I created an award show to give trophies to people that are in the art field and they feel like they're about to let go of the career and to keep on going. You know, I do so much stuff.
Yeah.
You can find me. You just type in Jake Estrada.
Yeah, no,
and chances are you're gonna see my big head, either bearded picture or wearing a fedora or something like that. But you'll find me.
Yeah, dude. You know, it's funny. I Googled you like a couple of days ago, and I just typed in Jake Estrada, and sure enough, there was, you know, no offense, your big head just popped up right there on the screen.
Yeah.
So so they will find you, man. They will find you. Jake,
Yeah.
this has been a blast, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. I want everybody to check out Jake's stuff. And BOCAS will be out soon. World premiere on Thursday. And Jake, thanks a lot, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, bud.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was a amazing story.
Dude, he really, I mean, Jake is awesome, bro. Like all the stuff that he's doing, dude, like it's amazing.
He reminds me of this young lad that I once known.
Does he really? I wonder what his name is, that lad, that young laddie.
You know, it's funny because getting back into the game, looking for that inspiration, whatever, that's inspiring.
No, of course.
You know, his story's inspiring.
Dude, and you know what it is? And just before we continue, I know that this show is going to air on October 11th.
Right.
And his premiere is on October 10th.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout. Go on his website. Check out the stuff that he's, like he said, Google him. He's on Twitter and everything like that. And then you'll be able to find where to pick up, you know, the movie. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right, dude. Like he really, from where he came from and what he's overcome, you know, and it's an inspiration, dude. I mean, at 6'9", he could have easily done a lot of bad things, and he did not let where he grew up, you know, change him or make him, you know, a violent person. He went to art.
First of all, I have a rule.
What's your
Because
rule?
I'm 6'2". There's nobody taller than me can be in the same room. So it's a good thing that he's in Florida because I cannot look up to anybody.
Dude,
it's not going to happen.
6'9", bro.
I can't even count that high.
That guy
6'9".
could have been a bouncer or, you know, mob hitman or something.
I'm like, really?
Jesus, he's huge.
It's like Steven Seagal. Isn't he Steven Seagal like 6'9"?
Is he really?
He's like, yeah, he's like,
Jesus, I didn't know he was that tall.
Mr. Seagal is like I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Jake is making movies, man. Making movies,
Yeah.
comics. Over 70 comics published, bro. That's impressive stuff, man.
it's really impressive. It's pretty it's a great story, and for all you aspiring illustrators, writers, producers, take a page out of his playbook. You know, he's overcome adversity. Really, some really horrific, you know, some losses, and somehow he's found a way to break through all of that. Most people would just break and cave.
Yeah.
You know, and he's in the game and he's still doing it, and he's making it happen.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the American way.
Yeah, man.
You know, you know what I'm saying? That's pretty fantastic.
And that's the thing. Whatever we want to do, and you know what I love about that story also was how much he obviously revered his father. You know.
Yeah.
And his father was the one that always told him, dude, you can do whatever you want. His mom was more the, you know, hey, listen, make sure you can pay the bills. But his dad was like, hey, man, you got a dream, go for it. Chase it. Go after it. And it's good to have that balance because I think, you know, as a kid, you're like, what the hell am I going to do in my life?
It reminds me of the Steve Harvey story when, I guess, in a school project, they asked all the kids, what do you want to be? And I think he said he wanted to be on TV. And, you know, I guess he got sent home with a letter or whatever, and his mom, I guess, was like disciplining him, whatever. And the father's like, what's wrong? It's like, well, you know, he went to school and you know, he said he wanted to, everybody wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, and he says he wants to be on TV. And he's like, what's wrong with that? So he told Steve Harvey, he goes, you know, write it down or something like that. If I don't get it right, but he says, write it down every day and make sure every morning you wake up, you say, I'm going to do this, and go for it, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And You know what I'm saying? It takes, you need that. Sometimes you just need that one person to say, I got you.
Yeah. The sad thing is that it sometimes it also takes that one person to say you ain't nothing. But you have to overcome that. You know, you have to kind of like, you know, be deaf to that and just say, no, I'm gonna listen to the positives. There's so much negative stuff around you that it's everywhere. So easy to kind of just say, yeah, you know what, I ain't nothing. But you have to kind of shift and say, nope, I'm going this way. This is what I'm going to do.
You have to have that Rocky moment where, you know, how everyone's saying, you know, you can't win, you're going to lose, whatever. And then you got to get into that ring and saying, you ain't nothing. You ain't so bad. You ain't nothing.
So bad.
Right? And, you know what I'm saying? You got to tell the voices they ain't nothing. And you got to go
Freddie
out there.
Fear.
That's it. Right? And go out there and put the work in. Yeah. You know, you can't knock the hustle. And I think, you know, this game is unforgiving. It's cutthroat. It's very competitive. Everybody wants to be a superstar. You know, everybody wants to be the next Instagram star. Yeah. Everybody wants to be the next, you know, Robert Kirkman, right? But there's only so much space. So where do you find your space in that world of so many drowned out voices? Right. It's hard. And a lot of it has to do with grit. You have to have the grit.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. That is right, my friend.
Yeah, so I think that was a really good show. Thank you again, Jake. Thank you. I mean, his pitch. You saw his pitch. You know, he said, he says that pitch. And he's like, you know, all you media people out there. I thought it was pretty cool. Made me laugh. So I was like, all right, I got you immediately. And it was like 20 minutes after he sent it to me. I said, I got you.
Right.
I'll send you an invite. But thanks again. You're a writer, you're an artist, you're a cosplayer, you're a musician, you're a struggling performer, whatever it is, you want to get on Catch the Craze, give us a holla. Join our community. We'll truly appreciate it. We want to get to 1,000 by the new year on our community list. And we're going to have some announcements coming up in November. We're going to have just a fan appreciation live broadcast where we're just going to chat it up with all our listeners out there. So we'll be, look for that coming up soon. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Tune in every Friday when a new show drops. You'll be able to see us on YouTube and hear us on many platforms for audio podcasts. So if you have, Google Play we're
on Google Play. We're on
iTunes.
Yep. We're on a lot of different platforms. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We provide both video and audio content. We're on Podbean. We're on comicbookpodcasts.com. We're everywhere.
Yeah, we're gonna be, and we're gonna continue to be everywhere. So just tune in next week as we have a very special guest. His name is Michael DeGrassa. Yeah, and he's a cartoonist. Very, very interesting individual. I got a chance to chat with him in the last couple of days, and he's told me some very, very cool stories that he's going to share with us on the air. So get ready next week.
Yes, and if you haven't watched the show,